Welcome to See You on the Other Side, where the world of the mysterious collides with the world of entertainment. A discussion of art, music, movies, spirituality, the weird, and self-discovery. And now, your hosts, musicians and entertainers who have their own weakness for the weird, Mike and Wendy from the band Sunspot.
So how was your Thanksgiving, Mike?
My Thanksgiving was pretty good. It was baby's first Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's nice. Did you feed her lots of tofurkey?
Yes, she ate. I put the tofurkey in the magic bullet, and that's all she ate.
Oh,
no,
perfect.
She pretty much stuck to baby food while I ate an entire tofurkey package.
You did by yourself?
In one shot, yeah.
Oh, that's kind of gross.
Yeah. It's the best part.
I mean, the quantity, just the sheer quantity of.
It's not that big. Like it says in the box, it says in the box it serves 8, and I'm like, 8 Wizard of Oz munchkins, maybe
8 very dainty light eaters.
Well,
not Wisconsin style.
I mean, that's what they think about vegetarians. You know, it's always like, oh, well, he's a vegetarian, he must be healthy. It's like, nah, that's not really it. And, but anyway, it was a wonderful Thanksgiving. I enjoyed the crap out of some tofurkey, a whole package. I liked it so much.
Excellent.
How was yours, Wendy?
It was great, thank you. Also ate excessively.
You ate a whole tofurkey too?
No, I actually had real turkey.
Okay.
Not too much turkey, but for me the big thing is the side dishes.
Okay.
You know, the candied yams and all the different potatoes and corn and cranberries. Yes, I like the canned cranberries.
All right, so I'm glad somebody does.
I'm one of those, and my sister does too.
But you also like candy corn, so I don't know. I can't trust you.
I do. I'm eating some right now, in fact.
You are eating candy corn. Oh my God. Like I'm seeing this over Skype, guys, and I can't stop her because I'm not there. I can't. She's eating the candy corn.
So sweet and delicious in my mouth.
Oh God.
So anyway, yes, it was a great Thanksgiving, and now the holidays are rolling up quickly.
They are.
The year end is upon us almost.
Yeah, 2016 has whizzed by.
Yeah, indeed.
And we're already at episode 120.
That's right. So we also, before we get to the interview today, want to invite anyone who uses Instagram to follow our Instagram account, which is @OtherSidePodcast. Yet another way to communicate with us and keep in touch, and we can follow you back and see what you're up to as well.
Yeah, and take a haunted picture. Like if you have any ghost photos, we'll even take your orb photos. We will. But take your orb photo and tag us in the picture so we can take a look. And the best haunted pictures, we'll talk about in the podcast, and we'll feature them on the website, OtherSidePodcast.com.
There you go.
The guest today is somebody that we've been trying to have on the podcast for a long time, and we just haven't been able to get the schedules working. But he is the proprietor of a cool place in the Wisconsin Dells. So everybody, Wisconsin Dells is like where people go on vacation in Wisconsin. It's got huge water parks, and it's basically the tourist trap of Wisconsin. But it has some really cool stuff too, like a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum. It's got a UFO museum, like a wizard quest. It's just a place you go, you bring the kids and everything during the summertime.
It's a fun, affordable vacation.
Right. So anyway, our guy has this place called Mr. Marvel's Wondertorium in the Wisconsin Dells. And Logan Marvel, the proprietor, the owner of the place, he is a longtime circus sideshow performer, and he performs a sideshow act for you every time you go to the Wondertorium. So it was a really special treat to be able to have him on the show. I've been trying to get it because I don't have enough circus people in my life.
All right, well, why don't we take a listen to the interview and see what he's got to say.
Today we welcome Logan Marvel, proprietor of Mr. Marvel's Wondertorium in the Wisconsin Dells. Logan is a sideshow performer, paranormal adventurer, and all-around Renaissance man. Welcome to the show, Logan. Thanks for hanging out with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And so Allison from Milwaukee Ghosts, Allison Jorlin, is joining us today as well. Hello, Allison.
Hi, everybody.
Okay.
Hi, Logan.
Hello, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. I'm just so excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to finally be on the show.
Yes, we've been talking about it for a while, and let's talk about why we were interested in it. So, Allison, you have been to the Wondertorium.
I have.
Tell us a little bit about the things you can find there.
Okay, well, I have had the pleasure stepping on Logan's neck and grinding his face into glass. Not once, but twice.
Oh, that sounds
And,
excellent.
it's a good time anytime I get to step on a guy's neck. That's how I know things are really happening.
Right. So, Logan, real quick, how does it happen that someone can go to the Wondertorium and step on your neck into broken glass?
Well, come down to the Wisconsin Dells. We're in downtown Dells, and we do a guided tour through a museum of oddities, and then after the tour, we do a live circus stunt show. And one of the most popular acts is broken glass walking. But I wanted to take it up a notch because you can see broken glass walking, a lot of the different places throughout the country on street corners on America's Got Talent. And I looked up an old bit.
In my bedroom.
In your bedroom? Yeah, right?
Yeah.
In the kitchen unexpectedly, sometimes not always so pleasant. And I just looked up an old bit of a performer who put his face in a pile of broken glass. I said, I haven't seen anyone do that for a while. I want to do that. And then I thought, well, what if I have someone stand on my head? And then when my sister and I parted ways professionally, she kept touring, and I came to Wisconsin to establish a Wondertorium. I no longer had an assistant. I thought, well, how about an audience member stand on my head? That's a perfect, Instagram moment right there. And so come out to the Wondertorium. Every show, somebody's going to stand on my head, and it could just be you.
Oh my gosh, and it's so much fun.
So before we get to how you got to the Wondertorium, let's probably start a little bit with, where are you from originally, Logan, that you felt the pull of the circus life?
Well, I was born in a small town in Ohio where everybody was either Amish, Mormon, or Guatemalan. And it made a very interesting dynamic. And from when I was little, my great-grandmothers lived next door to each other in a small town down the road called Cadiz, Ohio. And my Aunt Mary was the adventurer in the family, and in reality, she probably had never left within 70 miles of the town. And I don't know how it started, but my Aunt Mary and I decided every fall, starting at the age of 3, we would have Logan and Mary's Fair. And I learned magic tricks, and I trained the dog and the rabbit to get along with each other. We made carnival games, and that essentially became our family reunion. And everybody would come out once a year for Logan and Mary's Fair. And then
I want to go to Logan and Mary's Fair.
Right? It was a great time.
So amazing. It sounds so cute.
Yeah.
Okay, go on. I want to hear more.
So that went on. So I was 10 or so when my great-grandmother Wilma ended up passing away, and it just kind of never left. And circuses would appear in town, and I would go see them, and I was just enthralled. And I always felt like that was what I was, destined to do. I looked in the mirror and I saw a circus person, and it felt right. And I started training when I was 12 years old. Like professionally training when I was 12.
When you mean by professionally training, okay, so let's go back here. So when you looked in the mirror, first of all, it's just a great quote. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a circus person, baby. And so that's what you had to tell, it's like when you're leaving town or whatever, it's like, you knew what you were getting into when you got into a relationship with a circus person. But you look in the mirror, see a circus person, and you're thinking, okay, I'm going to go join. Now, Pinocchio could just get up and run away and join the circus. But how does a 12-year-old in Ohio join the circus? Like, where do you go? Who do you call? P.T. Barnum's dead.
We want practical knowledge here.
Right. So if you look in the mirror and see a circus person out there, listeners, how would you go and join up? So how'd you get involved?
Well, there's no easy way to do it. Circus people essentially see the world in two halves. There's circus people, and then there's townies. And anybody who's not born to a circus is a townie, and they're highly skeptical of townies, especially people who are wanting to join the show, because lots of people fall in love with the romance of the idea of running away with the circus, but they get out there and it's brutally hard. At times, borderline awful, and they don't last. So they don't like to waste their time in helping a new person.
Sure.
So I started training myself. When I was 12, I would stretch 4 hours a day because I knew I wanted to be a contortionist. And I stretched 4 hours every night.
Like a yoga master.
Right, exactly. And I would usually put in like 2 movies, and I would watch the movies as I was stretching. And then when the 2 movies finished, I know, I was done.
Are there any movies that are better for stretching than other movies? Like some movies you're like,
yeah, we have to know
Right?
this.
I could really stretch the Titanic. 3.5 hours of Leo.
Makes you want to stretch.
Makes me want to stretch.
I couldn't stretch anything super suspenseful because I would get so into the storyline, I would forget about stretching. So there were no psychological thrillers. I really liked
and no slashers either.
Right? Anything that was movie musical, especially kind of a doll movie musical from the 50s, worked out really well. Because then I can kind of drift in and out and just listen to the music, and that was my preferred genre for contortion.
You could really stretch to Brigadoon.
Or
exactly.
Oklahoma or the Music Man.
Yeah, I don't know. The Music Man's pretty exciting. He said dull.
Oh, okay.
And things don't get dull in River City.
That's true.
So, okay. All right. So, 12 years old, you figure you want to be a contortionist.
Yeah.
Now, were there any particular famous contortionists that you were like, I want to be like that guy? Like, did you see a contortionist or something that affected you in a way that this is why I want to, my particular talent could be that I could put myself into a little box?
Yeah. There were Daniel Browning Smith, who is a few years older than me. My first half of my professional life, we were very similar. We worked for a lot of the same venues, and I would see him on TV and internet, and I really enjoyed that he was both, a front bending and a back bending contortionist, which is very rare to see, because usually you're a female, that means your contortion's all based off of back bends, means it's easier for a female to do back bends. And then if you're a male, you're usually a front bend contortionist, which is things based off front bends, like putting your feet behind your head, things like that. And I really, really liked how he blended those styles. And then collectively, the entire nation of Mongolia. In Mongolia, essentially the national sport is contortion. You grow up, your grandma will teach you contortion like we throw a ball in the backyard.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I love Mongolia because of one of my favorite cryptids, the Mongolian deathworm, but I had no idea.
Sure, and I love Mongolian barbecues.
There we go.
And also, what was the name of the contortionist that you mentioned?
Danny Smith, Danny the Rubber Boy.
Yeah,
he was the host of Stanley's Superhuman.
Right, with Stan Lee. Did you ever see that, Mike? That's a great show.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So now I know who you're talking about.
Right. I mean, I love that guy.
Yeah, so he was kind of my hero before he was super famous. And I just thought that was going to be my career path was going to be a contortionist. Mostly, I thought it was cool looking, and I could train myself because contortion, you don't need any fancy equipment.
It's like why so many people are good at soccer is such an internationally popular sport, because all you need is the ball.
Right.
You don't need pads, and it's why hockey is like a rich kid Canadian sport.
Yeah,
because you need all the pads. You need like contortionist. All you need is a 50s Hollywood musical and some time, and you can do it.
Exactly.
50s.
And that's all that happened. So that was my first thing was contortion.
So how long between when you first started contortioning, when you're 12 years old, you start stretching 4 hours a day and really putting the time and effort into doing it. How long until your first professional performance as a contortionist?
I was 15 years old when I started working professionally.
Wow, 15.
15.
So 3 years of stretching.
3 years of stretching.
And how did you find the circus then? Did they have open tryouts? Did you find it on the internet? Was it on Craigslist or in some kind of they're like circus tryouts Friday at 6?
Well, it was a combination of looking on the internet, and ironically, one of the only places with a good database of circuses was PETA's website, encouraging people to protest the circus. So I would just find the protest list and find out where the circuses were.
So PETA strikes again.
PETA strikes again. Yes.
PETA made your career possible.
Thank you, PETA. Thank you, Ingrid Newkirk.
Thank you. And so I would kind of use that as a starting point for the little shows. And then I was ballsy. I was sending videos out to Cirque du Soleil and Ringling Brothers and Vine and Bailey. And I just kept going until somebody said, "Hi, how are you?" And that actually ended up on a little show called the Hendrix Brothers, which I'd ended up working for a few years later down the road. But when I made that first friend, and then all of a sudden it opened up this world of possibilities. And he said, "Oh, my Aunt Myra does contortion, and then her, sisters, brothers, cousins, everybody in the circus seems to be related somehow, owns a show, and he needs help." And so that's how I started, and I start to work, 4 or 5 dates for this company, or 6 to 7 dates for this person, which was wonderful because I got to work through this whole variety of shows, temporary shows down to mom and pop shows, which really made me a lot more versatile as a performer, because it's very easy, I think, in this day and age to kind of put yourself in a corner performance-wise in circus, because circus is changing so much, and not being able to adapt to, working from a beautiful 5-star theater, the next day working in a sheep barn in North Dakota. You have to be able, if you want to make a living, you have to be able to take it all.
To adapt. You got to be able to improvise if you're gonna be in the circus. You got to be cool with improvisation.
And, if you're a contortionist, you got to be flexible. In so many ways.
Okay, so 15 years old, your first professional performance with the circus. Now, you didn't actually just run away and join the circus, or did you?
Did you?
Kind of in between. It was a well-calculated runaway effort. That's what I always say. It took, thousands of hours of planning, and then I just kind of plunged into it. And with my parents' mixed blessing, and they kind of figured, let him go for 2 weeks. He's a lazy kid. He'll be back. Because circus is hard work. And I didn't mind it at all. I loved every second of it. He was swinging sledgehammers, or at one point I was living underneath a semi-truck, And no matter how awful or gritty it was, I just fell in love with it more and more. And the incredible people and the stories and the history that made it up. And, I've never seen a business where you could have your heroes. If you're into sports, LeBron James, or, if George Clooney's your hero, I've never seen a business where you can jump in the industry and then all of a sudden become friends with your mentors and your heroes like that.
That's true. It'd be hard to meet George Clooney.
And that's how the circus is.
Well, let's get into some of those stories. I want to know about some of the people you've met and, anything circus lore related or paranormal circus lore related, even better.
Well, I was going to say, what do you think is the top misconception people have about the circus? When you think about circus lore and what do you think is the number one thing that people ask you about the circus and you're like, no, dude, you're totally wrong?
The 2 things I get asked most often now are the animals abused, which I have never...
The PETA connection.
By PETA. And of all the years I've worked in circus and all of the people I've known, I've only ever seen one animal mistreated. Generally, and I'll tell you a story. When I worked for Ringling Brothers in Barnum and Bailey, they still traveled by train, and we were on our way into New Jersey. And one of the horses got colic on the train. They stopped that train in the middle of New Jersey, had a veterinarian out there that horse off and in medical treatment, even though they knew they were not only holding up the railroad, we had freight trains behind us that could no longer get through, where we were potentially going to miss our opening window to get in to set up on time to get this horse health care. Cut to when we were in Mexico, and a goat farmer threw a rock in and hit a Chinese performer in the head. They were told to suck it up. Those animals were treated 10 times better than the people were any day on almost every show I was on.
I think, people worry that anytime an animal is involved in performance, there's the potential for abuse. But what you're telling us is there's also the potential for kindness and for relationships between the humans and the animals.
Completely.
All right. So that's the first thing, is that animal abuse is not as widespread as you'd be led to believe. And what's the second thing you think is the biggest misconception?
People always ask, do you get paid? And I don't understand how I think we make a living if we don't get paid. That, we just show up in a town and people just throw food at us or can give us gas, which would be wonderful. But people don't see it as a legitimate career or a legitimate art form. So they assume that, you're not getting paid or you're pulling something shady to make money. And that's a pretty unique American problem. Throughout most of the world, in Europe, South America, circus is very well regarded. Almost In Europe, it's like the opera or the ballet. And in South America, it is the event. And not only is it the event, you might have that thing as an event 10 times in 2 months. It's not uncommon for, South American cities to get a new circus every week. And you will go to every new circus every week.
I can see that. Like, oh, you get paid? Yeah, I get paid. Otherwise, how does Logan feed himself, man?
Well,
yeah, even my own family sometimes. This was maybe a Christmas or two ago, and I had an aunt who said, "But what are you going to do? You really need something else." And I just thought, I've done circus since I was before I could drive. And and it's still supporting me in one way or another. And I looked at her and I said, "What did you go to college for? Did you go to art?" And I said, "How's an art degree treating you at Morgan Stanley? Are you enjoying your life?" And that kind of shut her up.
Right. Like you tell people, like, my backup plan is dying penniless and still happier than you. That's how you shut them.
That's exactly right.
Okay, so Logan, you're traveling with the circus. You get involved. You get in there. You're canceling people's misconceptions out. Mm-hmm. And what's your favorite piece of circus lore or something that you discovered when you were like, I can't believe this is true? When you first heard the story, you were like, holy cow, I understand the other side now. Maybe that's a little too much. But
I think one of my most just awe moments was I was sitting at a Chinese buffet with a bunch of performers. But, I was surrounded by people who were 12th generation circus, 17th generation circus, 5th generation circus. And at that moment, I think it was the first time I realized just the power of circus. That it is such a powerful art form that it can captivate a family for the last 17 generations.
Wow.
And everybody still works there. And I can't think of another family in another business that has been in the business 17 generations.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing.
17 generations.
Mm-hmm.
And a generation is generally thought to be like
20 years.
30?
20 years, yeah.
So 20, 30 times 17.
Right, so that's back to the old country.
Wow.
That's circus back to the old country. That's exceptional.
Yeah, and a lot of the families come straight from the court jester still. Yeah, and at that moment, I realized that I had something very important in my hands. And not that I'm the only person protecting the art form. I'm not saying that at all. But I think everybody who is in the business, whether it's circus or sideshow, they have a very important mission to keep it alive for the people who gave their lives to this art form before us. And especially in sideshow, that's kind of my specialty.
Right, and let's get into the difference between the circus and the sideshow.
Yeah.
So people think of the circus, they think of they think of the big top, they think of the elephant standing on 2 legs, crushing his man to death. They think of Siegfried and Roy getting eaten. No, but they think about the 3 rings and stuff like that as compared to the side. So what traditionally is a side show?
So a sideshow started in the form we know of it today in the late 1700s, the early 1800s. And it was wealthy people having collections in their house. They would travel the world, or they would know people would travel the world, and they would have shrunken heads in their house, or paintings, or musical gemstones, or a meteorite. And then people started to charge admission to their houses. And then the dime museum was born. And these were the first public museums. And that's where the sideshow format was really perfected.
The first public museums are based on collections that people had in their homes.
Right.
And so they die, and then they'd leave them, and they kind of create the museum. Like, I discovered that when I visited the British Museum for the first time. It was like, so the British Museum was originally just like a collection in some dude's house.
So it's like a bunch of antiquarians that got together.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, and let's create this. So what we think of as this cultural institution really just came from a few people who were interested in the first place. And you're saying that, so this is how sideshows developed as well.
Right, yeah, because first public museum facilities, often called dime museums today, all these other wealthy people's museums start to try and outdo each other. And they bring in novelty entertainers. They bring in the fire eaters, the sword swallowers, the bearded ladies. And the dime museum was born. And P.T. Barnum came. People always think of P.T. Barnum Bailey Circus. Circus came very late in his life. He was famous for being a museum man when he was alive. And he ran the American Museum, and he perfected that format He had beluga whales in the basement with bearded ladies eating fire under dinosaur skeletons, and a Broadway show on the top floor of his theater. And early circuses started to notice these museums, and they started to carry the museum with them. And that's how the circus sideshow was born.
Okay, so it's like a traveling museum of oddities.
Right. Yeah, and it's changed quite a bit.
So this is happening when we think about P.T. Barnum. That's right around the middle of the 19th century, right?
Yeah, right around the middle of the 19th century.
And all I can think about now is I'm thinking about Milwaukee's connection to that and how Harry Houdini got his start here in Milwaukee, actually, at one of those dime museums.
Right. So the sideshow, evolved from those dime museums. Today we call it a 10-in-1, which is 10 live acts under one stage, and that's the most popular form of sideshow we think of, the sword swallowers, the fire eaters, the beer ladies. So the sideshow was designed to get an extra dime out of the circus patron. Usually a quick show, in and out, because you want to move people in and out as fast as they can. Whereas a circus show, I always define a circus as 3 or more performers with acts consisting of at least, 2 or 3 of these categories. You have acrobats, you have aerialists, you have comedians, clowns quite often, or animal acts. I always say if you get 3 of those categories, you're a circus. Regardless if you're indoors or under a big top, big show or little show, that's kind of my defining metric for a circus.
I like that too. The idea of the sideshow is just developed to get an extra dime out of people.
Yeah.
Because they're like, hey, because you paid, it's like an add-on. It's
Exactly.
like today, when it's like, hey, you want some extra cheese on that? Oh, okay. And then so people just pay for it or super. It's
Right. Hey, you want to step on a guy's neck?
Right.
Yes, I do.
The circus sideshow is the original supersize.
It is the original supersize. And it was quite an efficient one. Sometimes they would pay the entire week's salary from the sideshow income for the whole show.
When we think about these sideshows, well, the first thing that comes to mind is like Todd Browning's Freaks.
Right.
Yeah.
And you think about the exploitation of people who are, maybe who have had unfortunate upbringings or, like medical.
Right, like the
wonders.
Elephant Man.
Like the elephant. Right. I was gonna get to the
you
Elephant
might
Man.
also think of that great X-Files episode, Humbug, one of my favorites.
With Jim Rose and his geek.
Yeah, Jim Rose and his circus.
Right.
And, if you started as a contortionist, Logan, and eventually became a sideshow specialist,
Yeah.
how did you move from the contortionist? I mean, are contortionists considered part of the sideshow, or would contortionists go into the circus?
Traditionally, a lot of big top contortionists did work in both. And they would always say that circus contortion was prettier and sideshow contortion was creepier. And so as a contortionist, that was a very natural transition for me. And it was actually, at the time I was working for a theater production. It was a circus, but it was a theater version. And we played very nice venues and very well paid, probably the best paying job, best benefits I've ever had. But I was kind of burnt out. I was kind of sick of contemporary circus. And I answered an ad online on sideshowworld.com. I didn't even realize sideshows were still a thing at this point.
Or that there was a sideshowworld.com,
Right.
I am going to immediately.
That's right. Immediately after the podcast.
All right, guys,
we're pulling that page up.
everybody to sideshowworld.com right now.
Yes, it is a treasure trove of information. And I saw there was an ad, on there that Ward Hall, whom the name meant nothing to me at the time, was looking for performers for the next year. And I called him. I said, "This is my skill set. Could you train me to do a sideshow?" And he goes, "Well, I can't train you next year, but if you get here in a couple of weeks, I can train you." That's what I did. I left early and joined up with him at the Ohio State Fair.
Wait, so you ran away from the circus to join the circus?
I did.
In the sideshow.
That's great.
Exactly. And
That
we
takes
were rolling
a
up
whole nother
to it.
level.
And my father was driving me, and there was a big cop on the ground, and a little midget man who looked like he was 120 years old standing there. And I said, "That is my new home."
Like Billy Barty or something like that. Just like, welcome, Logan.
It was very similar. It's not far off. And that was, turned out to be the worst paying job of my life and the hardest living conditions, doing 20 shows a day. But I loved it.
20 shows a day.
20 shows a day. And that was on a good day. In the Minnesota State Fair, we pumped out 35 shows a day quite often. It was brutal.
Oh, man.
Wow, those Minnesotans work you to the bone.
I was there 2 years, and when I left there, I was in 7 of the 12 acts. during that 30 times a day. And Ward Hall, who owns it, he's regarded as the king of the sideshow, is the last of the old-time sideshow owners.
Well, let's talk about some of the people that you've met. I want to hear more about that.
Or even the people who are, I guess, are there famous sideshow people? Like when I think of famous sideshow people, the only people I even know about are the people from the Jim Rose Circus.
Right.
You know, as being a 90s teenager, like that was something because it was on Lollapalooza and everything. So I'd be interested to know, like, you've met the stars of the sideshow. Like who are they?
Yeah. What I'm very blessed that I am alive when I am, because I know the modern sideshow, if you want to call them stars, it'd be a sideshow star today. But I was also meeting the last of the old timers before they were passing away. And two of my very favorite people, and actually my earliest memory of television, was Dad watching a documentary about Priscilla the Monkey Girl and Emmett the Alligator Skin Boy.
Oh, I remember Emmett the Alligator Skin Boy.
Yeah, and they were married, and I don't remember how old I was. I couldn't have been very old. I was 3 or 4, and my dad was watching it. And I just thought, how could somebody be half alligator and half man or boy? I thought, who would marry an alligator?
That's a good point.
It was completely bewildering to me. And so they billed themselves as the world's strangest married couple. And Emmett was covered in thick, bacillium-like skin from head to toe. Very handsome. His face, you wouldn't, if he had long sleeves and pants on, you would think he was a TV news anchor. And his wife, Priscilla, originally born Priscilla Rother after she was adopted, I guess. Rother was her adopted name. But she was billed as the Monkey Woman, and she had a beard and 2 rows of teeth and hair all over her body. And they fell in love at a young age.
Did she have lycanthropy?
Not lycanthropy. I forgot what the actual condition is called.
But
it was mistaken, and people think that maybe the idea for werewolves came from that.
I know that she's not a werewolf,
right?
But there's the Mexican aerialists, the Mexican trapeze family, and everybody has that. Even the kids have the big beards and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And so I was thinking that Priscilla might be that too.
Right. I don't know her medical condition. She very easily fits in to that, general definition, but I don't know if medically that's actually what caused it.
Okay.
And they had 2 children between them, but they were the happiest married couple, I think, in all of history. Priscilla used to joke with him and say, Emmy, I'm going to dye my hair blonde and shave my beard off tomorrow. And he'd say, Priscilla, if you do that, I'm going to walk out on you. I fell in love with you the way you are, and you'll stay that way till I die. And she did. She kept that beard till he passed away, and she promptly shaved it, but she kept her end of the promise. And, she died a few years after him, but I still say she died of a broken heart. She would just, they had a little house in Gibtown, Florida, which is where most sideshow people lived, and she would turn on their old 1930s and 40s music, and she would just dance even without him, just like they did every night.
Oh, man.
Well, that's a wonderful story. And so that's a couple that you got to meet when you got involved in the sideshow.
Yes, I was very fortunate. I met them when I was younger, before I was even interested in it. And then I got to meet Priscilla. I got to re-meet Priscilla as I was getting involved in the business and becoming interested. Emmett passed away in the late 90s, her husband. And they were wonderful. And then I always kind of see them as the old guard of human oddities. And we have this whole fantastic new guard of physically wonderful people, physically different people who are joining the sideshows again. Because that did disappear for quite a while. I worked with the girl who taught me to walk on broken glass, little Crystal. She stands only 27 inches tall.
Oh, 27 inches tall. Is that as tall as Vern Troyer? Or, I mean, the guy that played Mini-Me, and now he's on TV and stuff like that. Like he's that same kind of, like, totally small. Like 27.
Yeah. Like, even beyond what General Tom Thumb was, right? I mean, I don't know what his height was.
Right. I remember her telling me she wasn't a midget or a dwarf medically, that she had another unrelated condition that stunted her growth. But she didn't actually suffer from a form of dwarfism, which I find fascinating. But she's super skilled as a performer, escapes from little straitjackets and swallows balloons and eats fire. And
that's awesome.
Yeah. And that's another misconception about sideshow. People think you just walk in and gawk at people. When, generally you're going to see somebody do something incredible with a whole lot less than you. Like Jeannie Tomani was born without a lower half, and she would do one arm and do somersaults across the stage. And so you would see the best of the human spirit of these people overcoming all kinds of odds, doing things that you can't even do necessarily, and they have a whole lot less body, or sometimes a few extra pieces. Really, and that's what I find so inspirational about Sideshow, was that the magic is still there. It's people believing in themselves so much, that they're going to learn to juggle, a soccer ball from their 3 legs back and forth.
Right. That's an awesome thing to say, too. Like when I was talking about, when we think of the Sideshow, we think of the Elephant Man. So you're just exploiting somebody with unfortunate circumstances. But a lot of times it's the victory of the human spirit almost, that even if they, like a person born without a lower half of the body, can do amazing things with their arms and stuff. I think about, I was just watching Inside Edition last night because it was on at midnight where we are, and we were staying up and watching Inside Edition, and they talked about a gymnast who didn't have legs. And she's built like a brick latrine, and the way she just can fly around and stuff like that, like that's the triumph of saying, whatever life brings me, I am going to do something amazing. And I think when we talk about misconceptions of the circus and the Sideshow, that's a good one right there. Just to say, when you say, like, you talk about this little woman, 27 inches tall, and she can eat fire. I'm twice your size. You ain't going to see me eat fire anytime soon.
That's right. And I love that during this conversation, we're getting the two sides, because, we talked about animal abuse earlier, and certainly there are examples of animal abuse when you have animals in performance, but, you gave us another perspective on it. And now you're giving us another perspective on Sideshow performers. Right. And that's the beauty of humanity and the ugliness, is that we're capable of both things to extraordinary lengths and depths.
Are there any particular kind of, superstitions or lore about the Sideshow or the circus that have paranormal origins?
Yeah, the paranormal.
So, aliens love traveling shows.
Can you expound and explain that as fully as possible?
Especially carnivals for some reason. And, carnivals used to be very different. Now we go and take them a bunch of rides, but it used to be a bunch of shows, and you would have circuses there, and mermaid shows, and fat lady shows, and where they would literally compete to see who is the heaviest, and girls turning into gorillas, and, monkey races and the whole 9 yards.
We still have all those in Wisconsin. I still feel like we have all of those in Wisconsin.
That's why I'm here,
droves.
Right? Exactly.
Something had to draw me here.
Welcome.
And especially the old timers will often talk about UFOs hovering above the old shows. And back to Ward Hall, who in the World of Wonders, who was the first Sideshow I worked for, told me one day that there was a giant UFO that came and just hovered above his show and watched. Now, outside of the Sideshow, we have a little stage out front where there's free shows to entice people to come in to buy a ticket. And it just hovered there, watching what was happening. And I don't know if that these other beings are just fascinated by this transient lifestyle. And I feel like maybe there's some kind of, maybe they feel like they're kindred spirits if they're transient going through the universe. And we have these beings on the earth that are just bouncing from place to place. Or maybe they just want a good show. Who knows?
Right. Or maybe they just see the tent as a target.
Right,
like,
maybe.
Look at this. Look at this thing. Land here, guys.
Right,
well,
exactly.
What about alien abduction? I mean, because you would think, if they're really studying the population, they would, want some variety in their subjects every once in a while.
Right. And, what I think next, abducting someone from the Olympics, it's hard to get a more physically fit specimen in the circus. You look at some of those trapeze artists, and that's a pretty good test material. Or, I don't know, maybe they want some exotic sex slaves with some weird abilities. Who knows?
Right. That's
like you do.
If I'm trolling the universe, that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, okay. So show folk or like theater troupe, I mean, nobody is more superstitious than theater people.
Right.
Yeah, are circus folk the same way with superstitions and stories and like?
Yeah. Some of my favorite superstitions come from circus. And like if a bird flies underneath a big top, someone's going to die.
Oh, that's nice.
You're right.
Yeah,
it's super pleasant.
The idea if a bird flies into your house, that means death.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so a bird flies into the big top. And I think when I was reading a little bit of your bio, Logan, aren't you an expert on people that have died at the circus?
I love dead people. I have dead people in my house, both physically I have some mummies and stuff, and then I'm pretty sure this house is full of actual spirits. And part, I think, of the reason people have been attracted to circus for 2 millennia now. Started to see ancient Romans and slaves beat each other to death or be mauled by lions, was it lets us get close to death without experiencing it ourselves.
It's the jaws of the lion. Like the head and the jaws of the lion is totally a thing.
Yeah. We're not necessarily beating slaves to death anymore, thankfully. But when you see somebody jumping off a pedestal 50 feet in the air, hoping their partner's going to catch them, or going in that cage of 12 lions and tigers, or shoving a sword down their throat, you're watching people risk life and death in front of your eyes. And sometimes, I know aerialists. One of my old bosses, Elvin Bale, he was a daredevil, and he's paralyzed because of an accident gone wrong. When he was up in the air, he would hear people yelling, "Fall!" And people want to go and see what death is like without, having to get close to experiencing it themselves.
That's interesting. I mean, first of all, if I was the guy doing that aerial maneuver and somebody yells "fall," I would find that guy later and punch him in his face.
Yeah.
That's a funny thing, too, that reminds me of a story of the song Jump by Van Halen. So I always thought that the song Jump was like about a happy thing. Jump!
Right, yeah.
No, really, David Lee Roth said that he was watching the news and there was a guy on the ledge in Los Angeles. And he goes, there's always somebody in the crowd that says, "Jump, do it. Go ahead, jump."
Oh, man.
And so that's where the song came from. So when you said that guy in the crowd while the aerialist is performing this deadly maneuver and more than anything needs to be, have the will of the people help
Behind him, yeah.
right, the psychic energy behind him. Instead, there's some jackass.
There's some
going,
"detractor" there.
"You gotta fall, buddy."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the whole range of humanity there,
Right.
that we've been talking
From
about.
the best to the worst.
That's right. But yeah, so the idea of being able to put your head in the lion's mouth and surviving is again about the triumph of the human spirit, right?
Right, but it's also how close can we get to the edge, and there's a thrill, and I think people see. I mean, that's why we love trapeze. That's why we love people taming lions. Because these are fierce, crazy, unknowable animals that we think of. We think of them as wild.
So that's skewing towards the paranormal, I would think, because the unknown, the other, the animal.
Yeah.
The fact that or the fire, the fire and the rings, the primal aspect of life, the shadow side, that you're coming very close to it, and emerging victorious.
Well, Logan, have you had any kind of experiences when you're working in the circus? Have you in particular had any experiences that you can't explain?
Well, I think this is the first time I've ever publicly told this story.
Hey.
All right, an exclusive.
Yeah, we were driving in Michigan, and I was following the elephant trailer, and we were jumping into Cadillac, Michigan, I believe it was. It was the middle of the night, and to this day, I've never been able to explain it. And I start seeing somebody walking across the semi, and this moving elephant semi in front of me, and a man gets to the edge of the semi and jumps off and flies right above my car.
Okay, so you're moving. Right?
We're moving.
The vehicles are moving, and you see this person walking on top of the semi like in some action movie.
Right.
Like Speed or something like that when they're on top of the bus battling each other.
Right.
Or like all those cowboy movies, where they're wrestling on top of the train.
Yeah,
so
punching each other on
it's
the top of the
similar to
train.
that, but is the person running or just walking?
It just seemed like they were walking, and they got to the end, they took off, swooped down in front of my car, and kept going. And I immediately slammed on my brakes and swerved off the road.
So Jean-Claude Van Damme is flying in front of you.
So is this like a Mothman type creature or
This is the only
Like
thing
wings?
I can come up with is the Mothman. And, I swerved off the road. They clearly saw me in their rear view swerve off. And I asked them if they saw anything, and they said, no. And told me, Logan, you're just tired. You're hallucinating because we've been driving so long. And maybe that's the case, but I've never felt anything so real before. And then when I told my mother, she pretty much wanted to commit me to a psychiatric ward. But I really think that there was some being, entity, I don't know if we were just in the middle of his flight pattern, was fascinated, or maybe it was some kind of guardian angel.
But, there is a whole history of flying humanoids. And where was this? What area of the country?
Cadillac, Michigan.
Cadillac, Michigan. Okay, that's right. And so what did the person look like? I mean, what can you recall?
Yeah. Did he have acne? Was he good looking?
I mean, I don't. If he asked me out for a date, I probably would have said yes out of curiosity.
Right, of course.
Absolutely, we all would have said yes.
I'm like, all right. So let's go, Green Man. Are you flying or am I driving?
That's right.
Right. If he's flying, then obviously I'm going wherever he's going.
Right.
So was he green?
I think he was green, but that's my skeptical side of me is thinking maybe that even if he wasn't green, I've painted him as green because, people try to put the cookie cutter and try to match something up. And to me, that's the Mothman.
And being green ain't easy.
Well, all right. But then there's that whole backstory of the Green Man. The bride of the May Queen. What time of year was this?
This would have been in the spring of 2011.
Beltane. There we go.
Right, you saw the Green
Man. Oh my
gosh.
You saw the Green Man and he flies.
Nice.
Is there anything the Green Man can't do?
So that's amazing.
The thing that sticks out to me vividly to this day was his eyes were just glowing. And they were huge. And I just felt like completely exposed. Like I felt like he looked through me entirely.
And what color were they glowing?
They were like a reddish glow to them. And I don't care to ever see it again, whatever it was. I mean, unless I can convince him to come out here to the Wondertorium and be my special guest.
Oh, my God. That's like having a close encounter with Spring Hill Jack. That's also what it's reminding me of.
What's Spring Hill Jack?
Okay, so in Victorian London, there was this crazy, masher who was going around to people on the streets of London and, going after women kind of thing, but also just roughing people up. But then when the police chased him, he would perform these incredible feats of leaping over hills and fences and whatever. They weren't able to capture Spring Hill Jack. So he became like a fixture of the Penny Dreadfuls at the time.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so like the Green Man, Spring Hill Jack.
I know. I'm getting so many connections here.
Anybody here in Cadillac, Michigan. Well, that's exciting. So, and nobody else believed you, Logan. Nobody else on the in the show believed you.
Nobody. So people are very ambiguous a lot of times. They said, "Oh no, you were probably just, you're tired. Your mind's playing tricks on you." But in the next breath, they would go and they would talk about how these beings have visited shows there were shows, and so they were trying to discount me, but at the same time, they wanted to believe because of the stories, they've been brought up with and the legend of these beings following these shows, especially these show families from Eastern Europe. They were chock full of, all these superstitions and legends.
So what kind of beings would follow the show? So we got, possibility of a Spring Hill Jack type character.
Or
maybe Fae, maybe alien. We don't know.
Maybe.
Could be the same thing. But what other kinds of creatures have been seen by circus folk or sideshow folk?
Well, carnival people have always been very convinced. A lot of the old timers, because we work sideshows at fairs a lot, and those old timer carnival people come up and tell me that the old sideshows would have shapeshifters.
Ooh, a shapeshifter.
Yeah, they would say that a lot of them were Native American shapeshifters, and that's how they performed the miraculous transformations in the actual shows.
So there's a history of skinwalkers being part of the show.
Yeah.
Or at least, legend.
Right.
Well, an interesting connection there, though, is we were talking about Harry Houdini before. And, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle actually thought that Harry Houdini was real magic. And he's
That's
like,
right.
no, you're real magic, baby. You
Don't deny it.
You know you're magic.
And that reminds me of Philip K. Dick, because he wrote about a performing psychic who actually was a real psychic, but you got to make a living.
Right.
And so he was a performer in Vegas.
So that Skinwalkers thing is funny because it makes me think about how magicians actually used to try to sell their powers as supernatural.
That's right,
Yeah.
except for Harry Houdini, who broke the mold and tried to show people that there was technique behind what he was doing and not magic.
When we talk about the Eastern European families and the Eastern European stuff, are there anything particular like that came over with them from the old country or something where they would say like, we came but also
The vampires came.
Also, Baba Yaga came with us. or
Baba
something.
Yaga.
Well, there was one family who claimed they had a ghost that came, or a spirit named Lavinia, that followed with them, and they thought that she was living in one of their trunks. And they had these old great steamer trunks, just like you picture, show people having. And they said that this Lavinia was actually an opera star in Romania. And, especially in Europe, it was very common to have, opera singers and acrobats all on the same playbill. It was very, vaudeville before vaudeville was vaudeville.
Sure.
And that they said that she loved performing, and so that her spirit kind of stuck with their ancestors who had worked with her, and she will follow them around. And what I find striking about the story is people who worked on shows with them that weren't related to them would once in a while, because they knew they were, Romanian descent, be like, hey, this Romanian girl Lavinia was over by the ticket box looking for you guys. And they would all have the same description of this girl, and she was short, about 4'11", and a long black, ponytail with pale skin and beautiful blue eyes. And that she was somehow showing herself intentionally, or maybe, accidentally. She would get excited, and she would just kind of, make herself known to all these other show people that had no idea of these stories until they told, went back to the family, said, Lavinia, this Romanian girl is looking for you. And then they said, oh, don't worry, she's been dead for 300 years, or however long that was.
Oh, that's great.
Oh, that is an awesome story.
Encounters with Lavinia.
Yes.
Yeah.
So tell us, I want to hear more about the shapeshifters. I just can't help myself.
All right.
So whatever details you have there, please share.
Yeah. So one of my favorite, stories, and it wasn't even that great of a story. It was just a guy, some old carnies are just, they are characters. Like this guy, Confederate flag tattooed across his chest, probably 70 years old at this point, married to a young 24-year-old black girl who worked games, just full
How does that work? Confederate
paradox.
flag, and then
Right.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
paradox.
Yeah.
He's a states' rights Confederate. He's not a slavery Confederate. He's all states' rights.
All right.
Right,
I got
exactly. You. And he walked up to my ticket box one day, and we were all just kind of sitting out in front of the ticket box. It was a really slow day. It was in Elmora, Indiana. And he goes, there used to only be two types of people in sideshows. Homosexuals is how he pronounced it. Homosexuals are those Indians who would change into the beast.
Wow.
And I had looked around at my show, and I think 4 of my 5 cast were, homosexuals. Like, well, things haven't changed that much. I'd say that they were, once again, Native Americans. They all went back to Native American shifters. Every carny story I ever heard. And there was one young lady who would turn into a panther during the show. And now...
Cat people.
That's like Manimal.
Well, that's like the cat people with Isabella Rossellini, too.
Oh, yeah.
Don't
Or the
forget.
original Val Luton's cat people from 1942.
I'm sorry, go on. The pop culture references are flowing, and we can't help ourselves, but tell us more.
That's awesome. No, I enjoy it. And he said that, as they would show up throughout the towns, bizarre maulings of livestock would happen. And that he was always convinced it was her. And because, they would be in Maine, and sheep would be mauled at the neighboring farm and it looked like, a tiger or a panther or something had ate them. But obviously we weren't having panthers in Maine at that point.
Right.
And he was very convinced that she was just kind of hiding out in the sideshow, and she was some bloodthirsty shapeshifter. And in the story, he was back and forth between if she was actually some kind of like vampire Wolverine type of hybrid that was just bloodthirsty and hiding out and turning into animals to go attack. And then kind of his little, her redemption in his mind, there was a big carnival / town person fight on the Midway, just quite frequent. And that the panther had shown up on the
so
Midway.
it's like a rumble?
Yeah,
A
and you know
rumble.
why there's a rumble? It's because it's so darn hard to get a stuffed animal in those in the fair games. Like,
and they're all rigged against us, so the townies just go nuts and riot.
normally I would say it's just your garden variety townie prejudice, but if it's on the Midway, I can tell you exactly why. And it's because you thought you hit 3 balloons in a row with your dart and you still didn't get the damn bunny.
Right, and it used to be even more, there used to be so much more just sliminess in the carnivals. There's an old carnival family, and this was only in the 50s, I think, where the daughter worked in the girls' show. And, they used to have these strip shows that traveled the fair circuit. And her husband, who was the manager, would sell keys to her trailer for after teardown to all of these guys to come and, have a one-on-one session with the beautiful dancing girl. But what they would do is they would pull their trailer out before the fair would leave, so all of these guys would show up with keys that they just paid, I don't know, $5 for or whatever, and the girl would be gone.
I love that, though.
Right.
Yeah.
They deserved it.
Yeah, they
Only
called the townies
$5.
marked because it was,
Yeah.
and they would say, and I don't know how, I've never done the research and if this actually happened, but I was always saying it's because they would have people going through the crowds and they would mark people with chalk on the back or whatever that they thought would be easy pickpocket targets for the pickpocket or or whatever scales they were running.
So tell us more about the rumble on the Midway.
Yes, let's go back to the rumble on the Midway that the Panther showed up at.
Yes, so there was a big rumble on the Midway, and just full out people beating the out of each other. One of the game joints got knocked over, and it was starting to turn pretty brutal. And he said that this Panther showed up on the Midway and set all the townspeople just running. They weren't going to get mauled by, this Panther special, and there had already been blood spilled and, blood in the air. And that as soon as those townspeople left, that Panther turned around and walked right back to where it came from. And he thought it was this woman who, she turned herself back to the Panther, kind of saved the day, didn't want anyone to get killed, didn't want any problems on the Midway, didn't want, the fuzz there to cause any
and
problems.
Put herself out there. And, the whole idea of cat people, so there's that movie, Cat People, but there's also lore about were-panthers, and, some of it even going back to 19th century, early 20th century England.
Yeah.
Mysterious Universe, a podcast favorite of ours, did a whole segment on cat people being seen in some kind of, ancient mystical tradition of turning into cats.
Well, I would love to see a sideshow where somebody turns into an animal.
Right. Now, was that cat person, what heritage was she of?
He said she was Native American.
So she was a Native person.
Yeah, and I've never, that I can remember at least, I never heard a Carney story talking about, some type of shapeshifter that was not a Native American. They were always Native Americans.
So no Eastern European werewolves.
No, I had never heard of that.
That's interesting. So the idea of the shapeshifters and the skinwalkers in the sideshow. Besides Lavinia, so let's finish it up on what do you think is your favorite ghost story or paranormal story that has to do with the Big Top or a sideshow?
Probably my favorite paranormal story. In Hartford, Connecticut, the Ringling Brothers and Barnum Bailey Circus was set on fire, trapping 10,000 people inside. The arsonists knew when they were bringing the big cats on that because the big cat shoot, some of the entrances and exits would be blocked. And during World War II, lots of materials were not available, so the tents were no longer fireproof.
Yes, because of rationing, right?
Right, exactly. And trapping 10,000 people. And hundreds, mostly children, perished in the fire.
Who torched the place again? Like, why
it was
did they,
never 100% confirmed. I believe it was someone traveling with the show. Maybe a few weeks prior, someone burnt down the menagerie tent in Cleveland, Ohio. And I think he was testing it out. But it was somebody traveling with the show, I'm pretty sure. And so people were jumping on these bleachers trying to get out. And there's a group of children who swore they saw an angel open up the sidewall and let them out. And what is kind of interesting, I think, is that none of those kids had ever, not that anyone was super public with their stories, but they spoke at various circus day conventions and things like that. And none of them ever changed their story. It was just one of the most consistent from the details of how the angel looked in the whole 9 yards.
Well, how did the angel look? Can you give us a little bit more
Yeah,
details?
they said
Green,
the angel...
green with red glowing eyes.
No green with red glowing eyes. That's
No,
the green
no.
man.
They said the angel, they couldn't quite tell if it was a man or a woman. It was very ambiguous sexually, or gender, I should say, not sexually.
Yeah, androgynous, yes.
Yeah, you figure an angel doesn't have the junk.
Right.
Right.
That makes sense.
They all said it was about 6 foot, 6'5", and never to appear to have touched the ground. And I said it was just an absolute glowing. And the one lady I got to talk to towards the end of her life, and she said it was like the show Touched by an Angel, where they light up their head, but it wasn't only, his or her head lit up, it was the entire body.
Wow. She was one of the witnesses, and you actually got to talk to her?
Right, yeah. And she said that, thank goodness that angel was lit up, because the tent was so dark from smoke and chaos. Even if that angel was standing there, I don't think we would have saw him without the light.
Wow.
And then my second paranormal story with that fire, they had these steel tiger chute pieces that people were blocking the entrance. So people were literally piling into them. It was a stampede and getting pushed and trampled. And I worked in a house museum that had one of the pieces of tiger chute there. And you would take pictures of it, and you would see all kinds of images pop back. Sometimes you just get thousands of orbs. I know orbs are controversial in the paranormal community, if they're actual, if it's a being or not. You get all kinds of orbs. You would get pictures of almost things that look like faces back. And anytime people use any ghost hunting equipment, whether it be like a Ghost Meter Pro, just like, super advanced equipment, anytime it went near that fence, everybody's ghost equipment would go bonkers. And there was so much energy left there.
So a tiger chute is where the tiger would come into the tent.
Right. So today we push them in rolling cages. So the tigers will have a big enclosure outside, and you put them in essentially giant dog carriers on wheels, as I call them, and we push them. That wasn't always the case. You'd have the tiger enclosure outside, and they would literally build like a steel tunnel, a steel cage tunnel from the tiger enclosure into the big tunnel. And that's how they moved the tigers in, how they moved the bears in if it was a caged bear act. So it wasn't a structure that you could easily take down. It wasn't super tall. It was probably maybe only 5 feet tall, but a 5-foot steel structure with tigers, it wasn't something easily scaled either.
And so the tigers would come through, and so this is the place people were trying to escape through, and we still have a piece of it, and then we take a picture of it. That's when you see the orbs and faces. So much energy from that catastrophic, tragic event
is imprinted
onto the tiger chute.
That's right.
That when that for some reason cameras can pick up traces of that energy.
And then other paranormal equipment, like it sounds, like it's giving off EMF, which wouldn't make sense unless, it was electrical.
Right.
And it's a piece of metal, right? Is it metal or what?
Yeah, it's just metal.
Yes.
And, it was almost, it ended up in a circus museum in Indiana, Peru, Indiana. They didn't want it because of the nature of the piece, which is totally not how I operate. I see my museum as the island of misfit toys. I want all of that stuff.
Right, you want all the orphans.
But it was just in a junk pile. And then...
so did you get it? Do you have it?
I did not get it, unfortunately. The Al Ringling Mansion in Baraboo has it, and they rescued it.
Oh, so you can go see it in Baraboo?
You can go see it in Baraboo. I don't know if it's still on display. It's been a couple of years since I worked over there, but it used to be set up in the foyer on the second level, and I did the ghost tours there from time to time, and that was one of the just most, I can't even describe the feeling I would get near it or the people around it would get. It was just you could tell that piece was, quote unquote, alive. There was something happening with it.
Wow.
So let's get into your location. When you talked about the Ringling Theater, the Ringling Mansion, the Ringling Brothers.
And your Wondertorium.
It's all in the connection in Baraboo. And the Ringling Brothers, who we get the Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, Triple I Shrine Circus, with all the it's got as many names as a football stadium. But so the Ringling Brothers, Al Ringling, have a connection right to Baraboo, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm.
And in Wisconsin, we have this thing called the Great Circus Parade, where all the circus cars leave Baraboo, go to Milwaukee, and then through downtown Milwaukee, you have the Great Circus Parade. And we've talked about the Great Circus Parade in this podcast many times.
And Ernest Borgnine.
And Ernest
can't
Borgnine.
forget about him. But also the Circus World Museum is in Baraboo.
In Baraboo. So, like, Baraboo, Wisconsin is like a
Circus Mecca.
And circus peanuts are only made in Wisconsin, too.
Oh, God.
So it
Those
all
are
connects to Wisconsin. Wisconsin circus connection.
I agree with you on a lot, Logan, but not circus peanuts.
So, do you think your Wondertorium has any kind of paranormal activity associated with it?
Yeah, so we moved the Wondertorium into its first, year-round permanent home this fall. And we're located on Broadway Street in downtown Wisconsin Dells, which I always say is Baraboo's bigger, splashier brother.
Right.
And
Kind of like you, Mike.
the house that we moved the Wondertorium in was built in the 1930s by the Landry family, which operated as a funeral home, and they lived upstairs. And it was a funeral home for many years. He was also the only ambulance driver for a time. And people would joke when, the funeral business was slow, he'd drive extra slow to the hospital. And so we have the Wondertorium here. And as soon as we were going in here, the ghost stories started coming. And I thought, oh boy, what did we get ourselves into?
Oh, you love it, Logan. Come
I
on
do,
now.
but when you're putting your life's work in the facility, that maybe there's some
That's
angry
true.
ghost rumbling around. It's a little.
You don't want there to be any phantom fires.
Right? Yeah, you need to keep those away. And right away, we moved in, and little things started to happen. And the owner of the facility that we're leasing it from was over and asked if my partner Angel was seeing anything anymore, because she kept saying he was seeing images or having nightmares, and said he saw a woman in a rocking chair. And I'm telling her about the woman in the rocking chair, and she goes, "Oh my goodness, that sounds just like Janet." I said, "Who's Janet?" She goes, "She was the Landry's daughter who was born and died in this house. They call her the crazy cat lady. And she really didn't deserve that because she had very high quality, world class show cats. Beautiful.
She probably still was crazy.
long hair.
But nobody deserves that cat lady title.
No, she was like a
Because
professional
all us cat
cat.
ladies are awesome, I'm here to tell you.
Yeah, I love cats. We have one that we just got to please Janet. But so I just and so I told him the story. I said, I am the world's most skeptical ghost tour provider, paranormal entertainer. I think 90% of the stories I hear, at least, are bogus. But I love it. I love the paranormal. I love ghosts. I love the whole nine yards. I said, I really don't think this house is haunted. I said, there's no carpet in it. It's all wood floors. The walls are thin. We're downtown Dells. You can literally hear people talking at the gas station in the living room sometimes. So I think it's people's imaginations. It's an old funeral home. And she goes, yeah, you're probably right. And the owner leaves. And I'm sitting on the couch with a friend. And above the fireplace, we have a 3.5 by 5 foot painting. And that painting lifts off the wall, flies out about 3 feet, and comes crashing down.
Yeah.
And you saw it straight on, right, Logan?
We saw it. I saw it straight on. And, if it would have just fallen off the fireplace, the painting side would have landed face down. That painting landed face up because when it came out, something lifted it up so that painting side stayed in the air and it came crashing down on a glass bottle. And it put a hole through it, and you can still see where it's punctured, outwards.
And so was it hovering for a moment?
It
What'd you say?
I
hovered.
feel like somebody lifted it.
It lifted.
What was
It
that,
literally
Logan?
looks like somebody took one arm, on each side of the painting, pulled it off the wall like you would do it, and then she lifted it up and just dropped it in a fit of rage.
Awesome.
And then the next day, we come home. I'll send you the picture so maybe you can put it up on your website.
Yes.
Dude.
And somebody, it was probably a 2-foot cross, has been carved into our wood floor.
Oh, that's annoying because wood floors are expensive.
Yes, really,
I
really
know. That was
expensive.
my biggest pet peeve. He said, I don't know who's here, but if you feel like you need to damage something, please don't damage something that's original in this house that I can't replace.
Right.
Yeah.
Can't you just paint the wall or something?
Right.
If you really want to make your presence known,
Yeah.
Paint
Go
the
slash my
bathroom
tire
blue.
or something.
so people can find the Wondertorium in the downtown Wisconsin Dells.
That's right.
And what kind of things will they find there?
Yeah.
So if you come during regular business hours, we're gonna open up here for tours, and we'll start off on a guided tour through our Museum of Oddities, which we tell the story of dinosaurs and dinosaurs through our artifacts, and then all of those subjects that if these things were still in existence would cover. So we have everything from dinosaur bones to Marcos the headless chicken who lives without a head to shrunken heads.
You have a big mammoth tooth.
We have a mammoth tooth, which is one of my favorites. And this year we have a new display with authentic woolly mammoth wool and comparing it to elephant hair.
Wow.
So that's really fun. We have live animals. We have live four-legged fish. We have my favorite project in the world. We are the only public facility with Cymodonian cave roaches, the species of cockroach was discovered in Africa in the last, it's been 10 years now. 2 years later, the species was declared extinct in the wild because the caves they lived in were blown up for mining. Being cockroaches, most zoos have no interest in them, unfortunately. I keep trying to get some zoos to take some on.
Hey, how about fourth grade classrooms?
Yeah, I will send some up. I have some in a classroom in Eau Claire right now.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They're beautiful.
Let's keep them alive.
There's only 4 or 5 private breeders of them than ourselves, keeping the species alive. So we have a full, it's very rounded museum tour. Then after the museum tour, you sit down, and I'm going to do a live show for you. Maybe you'll stand on my face, like you did, Allison, in Broken Glass.
Yes!
I eat fire. We have the electric chair where we put a person in a working electric chair. They have like light bulbs off their forehead.
Yeah, I did that.
Yeah,
I did that.
isn't that cool?
And I'm still alive somehow.
You're still alive. Well, we think you're still alive. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe.
Yeah, right now I'm learning to juggle ping pong balls in my mouth to do kind of an alternative juggling act. So that tour lasts the whole thing about an hour, and then afterwards you're free to roam around. And then this year, for the summer season, we are going to do ghost hunting at the Wondertorium nightly. And you're going to come in, we'll show you the house. We'll take you down, we'll show you the elevator where they place the bodies up and down from, and show the embalming room, and the history of the house, the history of paranormal investigation. And then we're going to set you free and let you investigate your house yourself with ghost hunting equipment, and hopefully be able to make a paranormal experience for yourself.
Oh my gosh.
That sounds awesome. So where can people find you online so they can find more details about Mr. Marvel's Wondertorium?
So we are online, www.wondertorium.com. Information on the ghost tours as well there. We're on Facebook, facebook.com/Wondertorium. Give us a like. We're also on Instagram. We will be opening weekends here throughout the winter, and the summer will be open on a daily basis except Tuesdays. We are always closed Tuesdays. Always have been, always will. Don't come on a Tuesday.
All right. And so everybody, you can also find a link to Logan's pretty awesome Mr. Marvel Wondertorium in the Wisconsin Dells. You're going to be able to find that at the show notes for this episode at othersidepodcast.com/120. That's othersidepodcast.com/120. Logan Marvel, thank you so much for your fascinating time today. Next time we do an interview, we're going to do it in person at the Wondertorium, and we're going to take a tour ourselves.
Oh, I can't wait. Logan, we just love you. Love you to bits.
I love you guys. I can't wait for you guys to come up here and see everything.
What a pleasant guy, that Logan Marvel.
Yeah, and what an interesting person to talk to. Unlike any other person I've ever heard you interview.
Right, yeah, I think so too. Like, we know a lot of musicians who be like, oh yeah, it's kind of like running away and joining the circus. Kinda. But, I mean, he really did run away and join the circus.
Yeah, and to hear that perspective was just very interesting. So, Logan, thank you for being on the show. And Allison, thank you for being on the show. And I look forward to checking out the Wondertorium.
That's right. We're going to have to do a field trip to the Dells sometime where you can step on our necks.
Definitely. Yes, for sure.
So the song this week, we were putting together some stuff. We were thinking about that whole feeling of running away, joining the circus, escaping. And if you have a choice between living that standard life of quiet desperation or running away, joining the circus, and being part of the freak show, well, I tell you what we do here anytime. This song's called I'd Rather Be a Freak.
I'd rather be a freak. I'd rather be a freak. Well, I've seen a million snowflakes who just aren't that unique, so I'd rather be a freak. Let's hear it for the weirdos who never wanted to fit in. We ran away and joined the circus.
thank you for listening to today's episode. You can find us online at othersidepodcast.com. Until next time, see you on the other side.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
What?
We can't forget our Patreons.
Oh, never. I think about them every day. I'm not lying.
I do think about our patrons every day, let me tell you that. And one of the patrons we want to thank today is Ned.
That's right, Ned. Thanks for your pledge at the level where you get a shout out every single episode. And thanks to all of our patrons, which you can join if you'd like at othersidepodcast.com/donate.
So come where the cool kids are and check out our Patreon community. And we'll see you guys next week. Yeah, I don't know. The Music Man's pretty exciting. He said dull.
Oh, okay.
And things don't get dull in River City.
That's true.